started. And so here's what I want to talk about tonight is history of this project to date and where we've been to get to this point. What it is that we're looking at going forward, trying to get to a point of construction. Since we first started looking at this project, this isn't the first time we've done this. We've closed other bridges for construction. It works best that way. I'll talk about that more. This bridge is a little unique compared to the ones we've done in the past, where it happens to be in the impact of both rivers on either side of the bridge. And we've known that, and we've been cognizant of that. Since we started looking at this late last year, we've heard a lot of input back from the public already, which has been tremendous. This is how these projects work. We've got a lot of expertise. The easy part for us is figuring out what we do to replace this bridge. We know we've got to replace this bridge. I'll talk more about that. That's the easy part. The challenging part is all of the other factors that come with that, and the impact of businesses, the impact to the public during construction. We do a lot of construction around the city on a regular basis. As everybody knows, they see all the orange cones. It's always going to impact somebody. Even when we don't close a facility down, there is still impact. So we try to do everything that we can to minimize that impact. It's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, to hear from you. And so one thing I wanted to reiterate, and I'll talk about this at the end, about what comes next. We're not here to make a decision on anything tonight. We're here to get your feedback. Ask all the questions that you can. I'll try to get you all the answers that we can. If we can't, we'll get back to you. But I'll talk about at the end what's going to happen next, how additional information will come forward from here, so that you know what happens after this. But when we leave tonight, we're not going to make a declaration of what's happening. We're not going to take a vote. Not that your input's not important. We're going to take all of this in. I'll work closely with Councilmember Ballard after this, and we'll discuss what we think needs to happen next, and we'll go from there. Everybody's familiar with the area that we're at. You know, when we made the determination that this bridge needed to be replaced, so we have 285 bridges across the city in our system. We are required by federal law to conduct a formal inspection on all of our bridges every 2 years. We've done a really good job with that. I'm sure all of you hear a lot about national infrastructure and bridges. Our bridge system is in tremendous shape, but you get a bridge like this that's almost 60 years old. It's lived its life. It's at the end of its remaining at a service life. Something's got to be done. I'll show you some pictures and talk a little bit more about the bridge itself. But I'll mention again. So here's what I'm going to do then. I want to talk about options. We've looked at 4 main options. I want to discuss each one of those with you. That's what's on those boards. There's a handout at the table. If you'd had a chance to get it, it's got those 4 options on it, front and back. Talk about timing and cost related to those, some of the challenges, the pros and cons, and that's what we want to get your input on. Talk about accessibility, both from pedestrian accessibility is important here, vehicle accessibility, trying to still get people to businesses. You know, one of the biggest impacts of public infrastructure improvements is impact to businesses. It's not ideal if you've got to drive farther around to get to work or back from work or whatever it is to go to the store, but it's even worse if you own a business right by a bridge that's going to close. And we recognize that. And I want to talk about some things that we've already started looking into as far as a communication plan based on past experiences, things that we've learned on other projects. We've talked to businesses. We've worked with them on reaching out to their customers, and we have found some things that we think work pretty well, and that's something we want to offer up here too. I mentioned emergency response. We'll get to that in a little bit. So with that, I'm going to get started and talk a little bit about some background and some history. So back in July of 2021, based on our most recent inspections, we knew this bridge was at the point of needing to be replaced. We hired JEO consultants to start looking at this with us. Based on that bridge inspection. We've seen enough of these bridges. We've known for some time with the inspections that this bridge was getting to a point that we're going to have to do something else. I would tell you real quick, and some of the public feedback that we've gotten in the last couple of months, the question was asked, why hasn't the city done a better job of maintaining it? We wouldn't get to this point. And here's my answer is if we had not been maintaining it, it would not have lasted this long. It's like anything else. It's like your car, it's like your house. At some point in time, you got to replace it. It's just as simple as that. So we have done a lot to maintain this bridge over time. Again, it's almost 60 years old. So it's time to do something else. We conducted a detailed cost benefit analysis, our staff and JEO. This is what we do on any bridge project to look at these options I'm going to discuss with you. It became really evident pretty quick that the best option from a cost and timing standpoint was to replace the bridge. We know we're going to replace the bridge, but also to do it under a full closure and not allow traffic. I'm going to talk about that in more detail when we talk about these options. Our first goal isn't just to do the cheapest thing. That's not the point, but it's the best place for us to start, trying to be economically responsible and trying to find a way that we can get this project done, be done, and get out of the way. So that's where we started. In November then of 2021, we went to the District Advisory Board, looked at the concept and made a recommendation that, hey, we want to close this bridge down and we want to rebuild it. They recommended approval to the City Council. In December of 2021, the City Council then approved moving forward with developing a design to replace the bridge and close it at the same time. We knew then that we still wanted to have a lot more public engagement. One of the things that was driving that timing, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but I don't want to bore you with a lot of these details, is there's permitting requirements to work in the river. These are state and federal requirements that help protect the ecology and aquatic species in the river. And it's not just that happens in the river, but specifically in the river. We work with Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism. We have to obtain permits from them. In its very simplest form, we cannot do anything to disturb the river between effectively April and August, kind of through the spring and summer. So we've got to be doing the stuff in the river, anything that will cause disturbance to the water between September and April. We've been pushing here to try to see if we can get started then this August or September on this project and meet that requirement for the permitting, or we're going to miss out and potentially move out a year. I'm going to talk to you about some other options here that will move this project out a year, and I'll explain to you why that can still work. But we're hoping to still get started in August and hopefully get this done. We notified all the commercial properties north of the bridge about the meetings. We didn't get a lot of feedback. We heard from a few people. That's why I'm glad to see so many people here tonight. Sometimes even with our best efforts, we don't always get a lot of people engaged as much as we'd like to, but that's okay. That's why we came back to this. And I mentioned the timing was based on the permitting. So talk about the existing bridge and the problems with the bridge. And I don't think too many people would argue that we need to do something with this bridge. But I want to explain to you why we're doing this. So again, it was built in 1964. There's 4-lane bridge. You can see the median in the middle. At one time when this bridge, I know when it was designed and built, the thought was that that was a traffic safety consideration to make it safer for separating traffic. All it's really done is been in the way. It's hard for snow and ice removal. It's hard for maintenance. It's just an additional burden on the bridge. We've had other bridges like this too. We don't build them like this anymore. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So it'd be nice to get that median off there. As everybody's aware, there's one sidewalk on the west side. It's substandard width. It's 4 feet wide. We've heard from a lot of people for years wanting to do something with that. It's not really easy to widen a sidewalk on an existing bridge or to add a sidewalk. So our goal here would be to do more with that, which I'll talk about in just a minute. You can see the surface doesn't look ideal. Mostly that's crack sealer. Engineers have figured out over the years that the worst thing that they ever did was put asphalt on top of concrete on streets and especially on bridges. And that's what happened here. At some point in time, it had a concrete surface, starts having issues, instead of patch it some, you just put asphalt over the top of it. It looks really nice. It's really smooth. It creates issues with trapping moisture. It's been more problems than not on so many bridges, so we don't do that anymore. But that's one of the issues here. You can see some degradation and stuff along the edges. Our environment over time, we used to use a lot more salt, just actual salt for snow and ice melt. That starts to create corrosion issues over time when you've got reinforcing steel in a bridge. So something I wanted to mention, because I'm going to talk about this on the funding part. This bridge, so there's different designations, and I talked about the nation's infrastructure, and they talk about bridges being structurally deficient. This bridge is not technically, by definition, based on the most recent inspection, considered structurally deficient, but is really close. We have tried to be proactive over the years to get ahead of these, because what can happen is bridges can get away from you pretty quick. And I'll show you a couple of pictures. And just because it's not considered structurally deficient yet doesn't mean it's not getting there. There are problems with this bridge. One of the things that structurally deficient does, it allows a bridge to be eligible for federal funding. I'm going to talk about that more here in a little bit, because that's something that's come up with the federal infrastructure bill. And a lot of people have said, hey, why don't you go get more money? And the fact of the matter is we don't qualify for that money right now. We had a bridge on South Broadway. I have to think, because I've been here with the city for quite a while now, and how long ago that was. Within 15 years ago, down at 34th Street South, it's a brand new bridge now. During that 2-year inspection cycle, there were a lot of things that went really bad with that bridge. And on the next inspection cycle, we found some issues with that, and we shut the bridge down that day. When we found those problems, it was closed for 4 months. We had to find funding that we didn't have to make repairs just to keep it going. That's a perfect example of not waiting to the point that you have to do something. But this bridge has still got issues regardless. I don't want anybody to think that we're getting ahead of ourselves. So if you can tell what you're looking at here, this is exposed reinforcing steel. Basically a hole opening up in the bridge. If you go to the right side over here, there's a large crack in this beam. That is one of the biggest concerns on this bridge, and is going to become a considerable structural issue soon. If we wait too long here, even though we can buy a little bit of time, we'll have to start doing numerous things. We'll have to post the bridge for loading, meaning that larger trucks can't get on it. We've had to post some bridges in Wichita, unfortunately, that big fire trucks weren't supposed to drive on them. The challenge with that is somebody's got to enforce it, right? Because even with everybody's best intentions, they might see the signage and not know what it means. And then so you add additional risk factors if you've got trucks driving on a bridge. Again, my point, trying to get ahead of it. There's plenty of reasons to justify replacing this bridge. This is looking up underneath the bridge. This becomes fairly common. This white effervescence that we see is from oxidation and corrosion of the steel. It's starting to come through the concrete. Some of this is it's just kind of on the surface, but it doesn't take long. If we continue to get rough winters, you never know what the weather's going to do here, right? Who knows if we're even done with snow this year? We'll hope that we are. But every time we get weather like that again, we have the potential to creating more problems with the bridge. So what we came up with, sorry, let me go back. Recommendation just simply for what we want to do with this bridge. There's roughly 16,000 vehicles a day that cross this bridge. Fairly standard number for a lot of our arterial streets. Some of the bridges that we replaced in the past years, including Manissa Bridge at North High, the Harry, Lincoln, and Pawnee bridges on the Big River going south of downtown. This would, except for Pawnee, this would probably have a little bit more traffic than most of them. We closed all those bridges down when we did construction. The North High one was really, really challenging. But because it was a historic bridge and the way it had to be rebuilt, there was literally no other option. The other bridges we closed down, but it's a lot easier to get around those bridges than it is this one. And that's something that really brought us back to tonight, and to take another look and kind of slow things down, because again, when you got the rivers on both sides here, it becomes a challenge getting to the neighborhoods. But before I get too far off on that, I want to talk about, we're looking at a new bridge. It's still 4 lanes, no median in the middle. This is just striping. We spent some time looking at this project with the Wichita Bike Ped Advisory Board, and they do a great job working with us on all of our projects. and providing advice on what they think makes sense for the bicycle and pedestrian community. And also based on input we've heard, our plan is to put a 10-foot sidewalk wider on the west side and a 6-foot sidewalk on the east side. What that does with that 10 foot is allows a lot more room for bicycles and pedestrians at the same time. Putting a sidewalk on the east side, people have said, well, there's no sidewalk going either way on the east side right now. But I'm going to tell you, Sedgwick County for years did not put sidewalk on their bridges. And if they did, they would put it on one side. And this isn't a bad reflection of Sedgwick County. It just kind of made sense because they're in rural areas, right? And you think, why spend the money? What happened over time is those areas started annexing into the city and started developing. First thing people wanted was sidewalk, and adding sidewalk to a bridge is a very expensive and very challenging endeavor. I've worked with Commissioner Cruz on a bridge that we haven't resolved on Arkansas west of 37th, where a lot of people would like to add sidewalk to that bridge. And we haven't given up just for this reason, but it's going to be over $1 million because of the length of that bridge, just to add sidewalk to it. My point being, we're going to take the opportunity while we're building a new bridge and put sidewalk on it right now. Even if it doesn't connect to anything, we've regretted every time we didn't do it. It gives us the opportunity to make those connections in the future. So I think it makes a lot of sense. The river path here, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens with that during construction and the access. It will be built back. We're going to make some improvements down here that I think that'll be kind of pretty cool on that end. One thing I want to mention real quick, I just didn't see the need to get into detail tonight. Within our capital improvement program, the city council in the last few years approved a 2% for art ordinance. And our design council, which is a board appointed by the mayor, they review certain projects and make a decision whether they should be considered for special consideration. This project has. It's a highly visual bridge. Bridges are great opportunities to make improvements on. So we've got an artist on board. We've got plans to make some really cool aesthetic enhancements here with the hand railing, with some tower lighting and things like that. If you've had a chance to see the new Harry Street Bridge south of downtown and seen the cool lighting we've done there, that's similar to something we might do here. So I just wanted to mention that. We're going to make this as a really neat looking bridge by the time we get done. So I'm going to start talking about options and the options we've looked at and the options we'd like to talk to you about tonight. This is the part we'd like to hear the most feedback on. And I'm going to summarize these. There's 4 of them, and then I'll summarize these in a table and talk about the funding, the timing and all that. And you'll kind of be able to see it a little bit better. First option is the one that we've talked about that the city council has currently approved. Rebuild the bridge, new bridge, 75-year lifespan, close the bridge. We think we can build this bridge and be done in 14 months. And we also anticipate right now that we could start this fall and get going on this. Estimated cost is $7.5 million to rebuild this bridge. I'll show you something here in just a minute that shows you that already exceeds our original estimate. I think everybody's aware of what's been going on in the world the last couple of years, and we have not been exempt from that. We haven't had a chance to catch up to inflation, supply chain issues, material costs. So everything we're doing is costing a little bit more, but this is our baseline. We could start in the fall. Again, the bridge would be closed, a signed detour, either the orange or the yellow or both, would be provided. Pedestrian traffic along the river, because this would be closed south of the bridge, we can reroute the bike path up and over, and or we could take pedestrians down to 15th because there'll be no vehicular traffic in here. This gets the project done the quickest and gets out of everybody's hair, and it's the most cost effective. That's just our place to start. Again, that's our baseline. Next option then is to look at keeping one lane open. And that arrow shows southbound only. When we first started looking at this and talking about this, we thought from our perspective, that might make the most sense because for response time for Wichita Fire, the closest fire station is at 21st and Coolidge. And so if they had southbound, they could basically maintain their same coverage. Maybe that still is. That's something we'd like to hear from you about. One of the the challenges with that, or one of the things it doesn't solve, is it still doesn't help get people from the south to the businesses at 21st and Amidon, because you still can't go northbound. There's also, we've heard a lot of, quite a bit of concern in talking to the Bike Pit Advisory Board and others, that there are pedestrians that live, especially down here in the residential neighborhood, that want to walk across the bridge up here to go to restaurant, retail, grocery store, whatever it might be. We have worked closely with Wichita Transit. We have a plan to help with that I'm going to show you in just a minute. But for right now, and we would do that with all options, this would be at 9 months. So almost a 2-year project, add $2.7 million in cost, and we would have to delay the start till the fall of 2023. The reason for the delay has a lot to do with what I talked about on the timing for the permit, and we can work in the river. So far, our design work is focused on closing the bridge, but even if it hadn't, it's going to take us long enough to design this bridge to be built under traffic that we will miss that permitting window. We'd have to start in the fall. That's okay. When I talk to you about the condition of this bridge and not being structurally deficient, it is not in peril. It's not gonna be a hazard. This bridge is not gonna collapse. We feel comfortable we can get another year out of it, but that's about all we're gonna get without having to really sink some money into this bridge and keep it going, which we're gonna try to avoid to do, because we don't want to add on top of this cost with having to do maintenance with it too. So it can work. We would just have to wait to start until the fall of 2023. Again, it's 75-year lifespan, 1 lane. We would be kind of open discussion what that might be. We'd have a signed detour for the other direction. And here, because we're maintaining traffic, we would look to take a pedestrian detour basically for the river all the way down to 13th. And some of those things have yet to be decided. Those are details we'll work out later when we make a decision of exactly what we're going to do here. So this is an option, again, that I'll show you all together here, that we don't even have enough funding yet, not quite for the first option. And so this would add to that, just for what it's worth, take a little bit longer. Building a bridge in sections at a half of a time does not happen very often at all. We did not have a very large sample size to draw from to do these estimates. Brad's been designing bridges for years and is a great resource, but you go talk to KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation, they'll say, well, sure, you can build a bridge half of the time, but we still don't do it that often. I'm sure all of you have been out in rural areas and seen when they're going to build a new bridge. They typically will build a new bridge beside the old one. They'll close it just long enough to connect the dots and tear the old one down. We don't have that luxury here, or we're going to impact commercial properties north of the bridge. We would have to take out properties to be able to make that happen, because we just can't offset without getting into that. That's one of our biggest challenges, is being in a urban setting like we are, is not having that space. Trying to design a bridge half at a time and build it half at a time also introduces some inherent potential safety issues for the contractor, for those using the bridge. Again, we can make it work. But everything's got to be just right, and it can impact the long-term integrity of the bridge itself. Bridges ideally are meant to be built all at one time. That's why most of them are done that way. And that's why the overall, as far as what we'll get out of quality and integrity of this bridge, it's best to close this down. This can be done. It's just going to be a little bit challenging. We're hoping that our cost estimate gets us there. But again, we don't have a lot to rely on, because this just doesn't happen very often. And one more thing I might mention here too is, again, I mentioned you're still going to have impact, especially if it's southbound. Still going to have impact to the businesses on the north side, because people can't go northbound. One of the things I wanted to mention, we've spent a lot of time over the years looking at traffic impact on public improvement projects, even on a roadway where we keep, let's say it's a 4-lane roadway, and we keep 1 lane going in each direction at all times, which we typically do. We have taken traffic counts before construction and during the project. We see on average a reduction in traffic of at least 40% during those projects. And it's mostly because people just want to avoid construction, right? So what'll happen here, for what it's worth, is even if we keep one lane open, you're still going to see a reduction in traffic. People are probably still going to go somewhere else and go around it. But one of the places we can try to help, again, is with the communications plan and some of the things we can do to alert people to that, which I'll talk about here soon. Another option we looked at was trying to keep 2 lanes. And we haven't had the opportunity to really dig into this yet because we've got to get into some real core design work if we're even going to try to make this work. This would be a tremendous challenge. You can do anything with enough money, right? I've come to believe in the last week since we've talked about this and talking to Sean and Brad, that says $11 million plus because I don't even think it's close to that. If I had to guess, we would probably be pushing $15 to $20 million to try to build the bridge this way. 25 months, it's hard to say too. When even carrying 1 lane, I talked about that permitting part. There's a potential, just so everybody knows, that if we try to keep a lane of traffic open, which is okay, I'm just providing facts, nothing more. If our timing is not perfect, and we don't get out of the river with our work during that permitting period, there could be a time when no one's working on the job, which is not ideal, but that's especially, the public is not really pleased when they see that nobody's working. That's one of the issues we'll be faced with, one of the challenges we'll try to deal with. It's just really hard to say. And here's why. I'll tell you what could delay a project too. I talked earlier about weather. We never know what's going to happen with weather. If we get a ridiculous spring and lots of rain and the river's up, permitting or not, there's only so much a contractor can do to work in a river that's at very high elevation. So there's a lot of factors that come with that. I'm not trying to talk anybody into the idea of saying we should close it down and build it all at once, but all of those factors come into play when we're looking at this and trying to determine what the best timing is. Even with the expertise that I have on my staff and that Brad brings to this, there's a lot of those things that we just can't engineer because there's so many variables that are out of our control. I don't think this can work very well at all. I don't think it can be safe. Even if we kept 2 lanes, they would be very narrow lanes. It would not feel comfortable. That's not to challenge anybody. That's not to try to keep people off the bridge, but that's the only way we can possibly make it work without getting into major right-of-way acquisitions and things like that. So we've talked about this. I'm here to tell you that I don't think it can work very well at all. This is the one thing that I would say that we really should not try to look at. I know it'd be the best situation here if we could keep 2 lanes of traffic going. It's just going to be really, really tough to do. This would also be delayed to the fall of 2023 to start, which again is okay. If we do anything but close the bridge down and close it to traffic, we'll have to wait to start till the fall of 2023. That's okay if that's what we need to do. There's just a lot of unknowns at this time with this option. One other option, the last option I want to talk about, we looked at, is because it makes sense. We do this with our roadways. We want to do it with this bridge too. What if we just did a more significant rehabilitation of the existing bridge? We can fix that stuff we showed you. It costs quite a bit of money. But what our best estimate is for rehabilitation is just over $4 million. Keep in mind, to close the bridge and under no traffic is $7.5 million. So this would be $3.3 million less. $4.2 million sounds a lot better to all of us. 7 months is the least amount of time. We think we could build this under traffic. It would also have to be delayed. But here's the real part about this that we would have to consider. This would get us less than 10 years. The new bridge is going to give us 75 years or more of life. New technology, new products, new materials, things that give us even longer life than the bridge right now. This would only get us less than 10 years. And at that point, we would have to rebuild the bridge. So we're talking about $4.2 million now, and in less than 10 years, anywhere between $7.5 million and $15 million. We think this is a fairly easy decision to say, let's don't do this option. But it was worth looking at when we looked at our cost benefit analysis across the board to look at the life cycle of the bridge. We think it's important to look at this. Again, it would keep traffic open. It's probably not a viable option for us at this time. Putting these all together in one spot, I won't spend a lot of time on this because I just talked about it, but you see the three options. We can get 75 plus years. We look at where the start would be. The closure option could start this fall. The rest of them would have to delay a year. The duration, anything but the closure, we push to close to 2 years. And we hope everything falls in place that works that way. And we'll be confident that we will. I think the $11 million for option 3 is low. It's going to be a lot more than that. So really, to me, kind of looking at the first two options, you're looking at $7.5 million. It's $10.2 million. This bolded line in the middle, just so everybody knows, the current funding we have available is $5.5 million, because when we did the original estimate for this project, it made sense. That's about what this was going to cost. Because of the impacts of inflation, everything that's happened with COVID, we are seeing price increases like this. And you know what? I think we can make that work. It's something we're going to have to make work. But one of the things I wanted to talk about again real quick, this bottom part, I'll just mention to you so you don't have to read it. Councilmember Ballard and I have talked about this several times. I actually was on a call this morning with the KDOT Secretary of Transportation about numerous things. And she asked me what was going on. I told her about this meeting tonight, and I was talking to her about the issues we were dealing with. And her first response was, hey, there's this big federal infrastructure bill. I'm sure you've all heard about this. $1 trillion in biggest bill ever for infrastructure spending. Why don't you get some of that money? I would go back and tell you again, this bridge does not qualify for federal funding right now. We think it's better not to wait until the point that it does, because we run the risk of it degradation and deterioration too rapidly. It becomes more expensive and it becomes more of an issue then. So we're still recommending that we find a way to fund this on our end and try to stay on one of the schedules that we've looked at. I mentioned pedestrian access, and this is one of the things that I think really can help here. And this is what we would do. This is what we would plan to do, regardless of the option that we come up with, whether it's closing the bridge, 1 lane, 2 lanes, whatever it might be, probably not the 2 lanes. We've worked with Wichita Transit right now. So this blue route, if it's closed, or let's say it's southbound only, that blue route doesn't happen. If it's 1 lane, it's probably still safer just not to put the buses on there. All of these 12 bus stops you see, temporary bus stops, there's 6 in each direction. Wichita Transit has committed to putting those bus stops in. They will run every day, Monday through Saturday, at no cost. And so I think that helps. And that's something that we want to do regardless of the option. Because again, we heard there's dense residential south of the bridge, especially. There's people, I can remember Commissioner Cruz mentioning this to me one of the first times we talked about it. What do you do about the people who need to walk up to Dillon's and restaurants, whatever it might be? I think this helps. I think this goes a long way to try to help with that. No matter what we do, I think it's really good what Wichita Transit's done. Sean worked really hard on this to try to get this set up. So I want to make sure everybody knew how that was going to work. Response time plan for Wichita Fire Department, and I'm almost done. I'm getting close to being done here, I promise you, and I thank you for bearing with me. I suspect there could be some questions on this. If there is, we'll come back to it. Right now, I mentioned this fire station at 21st and Coolidge is the closest fire station. This is the bridge closure, obviously this big area of 21st and Amidon. In general, what fire's plan is to utilize the station at Central and Elder and Main and Murdoch for coverage south of the bridge. What I've talked to them about and what I've heard from them is it's minimal impact. It's kind of hard sometimes to make a real determination. And I'm not trying to be the expert here, but I've talked to him enough now to understand it. It really is going to depend on what happens and where. Obviously, we all know that. So it's hard to give a concrete answer on what's the impact to response time, because there's other variables with that. But being able to use all 3 stations instead of the 1, we think working with our partners in the fire department is a viable option. I talked about a communication plan, and this is the last couple of slides. I'm going to wrap up here pretty quick, and then we'll be able to start asking about questions. This is something that we wanted to do no matter what happens here. When we first started thinking about this project, we knew immediately the impact it was going to have to a lot of people, especially the businesses and the properties around 21st and Amidon. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. I don't know if I want to use those terms, but when any public infrastructure, we're going to have an impact on people. We're absolutely going to have an impact on people. I mentioned there's a reduction in traffic because people don't want to drive through construction. They may just go somewhere else. It's a challenge, but it's got to be done. So what we try to do during development of these projects, and I think we've done a lot better job in working with our communications team. And I don't know if Megan Lovely is still here. I don't see her, but we have a really good communications team that helps us with this. In the world we live in now, electronic communications, social media, all of those things that people have, it is really easy to reach out to people. And so what we've done is we've encouraged the second bullet here, and we have found this has worked pretty well, even if it's just on road projects. We'll get with, and I know this is a little bit of extra effort for a business, but in the grand scheme of things, we encourage businesses to start reaching out. I mean, it's March here. At a very minimum, we'd start something in August, so there's quite a bit of time here, but we encourage businesses to start telling their customers, hey, there's going to be work on the bridge. Regardless of what happens with it, there's going to be work on the bridge. We know it's going to be harder to get here. Keep in mind, we're still open. We'd like to see you come back. Here's how you get to us. We have gone back to businesses after projects were completed, and they said, you know, it worked pretty good. Our numbers were down a little bit, but generally, we got people that wanted to come see us. That's a pretty easy thing to do. Our communications team can help with that, can help draft messages. We could come up with maps, whatever it might be. If we were able to find a way to keep this bridge open to 2 lanes of traffic, there's still going to be a drop in traffic. So this is something that we would want to see be done regardless. We would work with businesses on placement of temporary signs in the right of way. So an example is if we decide to close the bridge, or if we decide to keep 1 lane southbound, you're still going to have people that get to 13th and McLean and can't get north up here. We would work with the businesses. What we have seen work real well, this has been done a lot on East Kellogg, to put together gang signs, big signs, it's got all the businesses on it. We would allow that to be placed in the public right of way, so that people would see that, and it would tell them these businesses are still open. Here's how you get to us. We have seen that work because we've talked to businesses, we've watched what traffic did, and it works. It's not as ideal as it is today, but something's got to give because we've got to rebuild this bridge. So we're offering that up as something that can help out too. The project will be included on forum. So if you spend much time on the city's website or not, there is a new civic engagement conversation platform on wichita.gov called Forum. So if you go into the wichita.gov, all you have to do is type in Forum and you'll go to it. This project is already on Forum. This PowerPoint you're seeing tonight is on Forum. It's a great place to go in there and have conversations. It is staffed by city staff. They watch, they will provide answers to questions. We expect to use Forum as one of the ways to continue to communicate with all of you and all of the businesses as we go forward. This is a lot of information. You don't have to read through all of this, but I wanted to tell you what this is. This was a communication plan we started developing right away. This is based on if we were to close the bridge. That doesn't mean we've made that decision. It was a place to start. Pretty much all of this will stay the same no matter what we do, whether we close the bridge or leave it open to traffic. This is the city's commitment. If we were to start in August, that we would provide updates. Mayor's briefing would talk about this, district newsletters, press releases, direct mailers to businesses, 3-time weekly social posts across all social media platforms to inform people what's going on. The way those things can help too is the city can promote saying, you can't go northbound, let's say on Amidon, but here's how you can get to all the businesses at 21st and Amidon. And that's something that we can, again, contribute to try to help make sure that people are still getting back to those areas. Monthly social posts, weekly social posts, all these things through the end of construction of the project. We're going to do that no matter what happens, no matter what comes out of this meeting tonight, no matter what we decide. It is something that we're going to make sure we have a robust communication plan on our end, because we do this on a lot of projects. This is a special project. It's pretty unique in how it sits here. There's a lot of businesses in the area. There's a lot of people impacted, so we want to do that. So what's next after tonight? We're not here to make a decision tonight, but I hope there's a lot of questions. If you don't feel like asking questions tonight, watch on forum. The letter that you got inviting you to this meeting has Sean's contact information. He's a great guy to reach out to. You can find my contact information anywhere. We want to be able to help answer questions. Here's our goal, is to make a decision by early May on what it is that we want to do so that we can keep moving forward in some manner. Whether we decide to go ahead and close the bridge down or not and try to start this August, we still want to move forward and be able to get a plan started and keep moving. So we'll plan to be at the May 2nd District 6 Advisory Board. Everyone who's here tonight and then through those platforms we talked about will be notified about that meeting. We're going to be discussing the project to tell you when and where it is. Residents will be kept informed by other ways through Councilmember Ballard's District 6 newsletter. I mentioned forum, City's podcast, YouTube, City Channel 7's got a lot of good information on it. We talked about signage and direct mails, social media channels. I know I'm kind of belaboring a lot of that, but I just want to make it very clear that we're going to use everything that we have available to us. If an option other than full closure is to be considered, the project will need to go back to the City Council for approval, because they already approved one time saying that the bridge would be closed. This very well may happen. I've been doing this a long time. There's been a lot of projects that we've worked on that we went through this process and found that there's just a different way we ought to do it. And we've gone back to the City Council. I can't speak for what the City Council will decide, but what we'll do, if the decision is made to do something else, I'll present that information to the City Council, and it's up to them to decide what they want to do going from there. Because as part of that, we would also have to request for additional funding. Right now, I don't know where that would come from. Historically, if we need to find that much more additional funding, something will have to change in the priorities of other projects generally across the city. So something else may have to move out. Something we'll have to change the scope of work. But you know what, when it comes down to it, this is a big priority because it's a bridge. We've got to get it taken care of. And if that's what has to happen, then so be it. We've seen that happen before too. Okay, I'm done. Thank you for bearing with me. Happy to answer any questions. And I can go back on the slides if it helps. So I would say again, if you don't mind, you either need to talk really, really loud or try to come up here.
Oh, I'll come up here.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Pat Lehman. I have lived just north of here for 50 years. I have seen this area go down and come back. The only reason we're here tonight is not because of you. It's because our city councilwoman cared enough to call this meeting, because this thing had just slid under the radar. I would grant you got all this social media, da. The majority of people that live in this area, majority of people in this room, don't necessarily often go to those websites. We don't do it. I mean, it's good to talk about it and you can post all you want to, but the probability is we won't see it. So I watched this city, this whole area die. And now you're proposing to kill it again. I'm going to tell you, we have many small businesses in this area. Some are women owned. I don't know if you've ever been involved in small business, but it's a huge risk to take. You bet everything you've got and you work like a dog to keep it going. To hinder by closing everything down and hindering traffic coming into those small businesses is going to be fatal for them. And I'm going to have to sit and watch this whole area go down again. This has become a vibrant community area where we have lots of businesses, lots of things to enjoy. I know we're talking about money, honey. Let me tell you something. I just read in the paper where the previous city council voted to give a special sales tax. And guess what? The city gets 10 million and the developers get 30 million. Isn't that interesting? That's 30 million that could have gone into our coffers, not to the developers. So we're paying them to develop something. I'm getting tired of that kind of attitude. This is money that needs to be spent on behalf of the taxpayers for a change, not the downtown developers. So I'm opting for the keep the lanes open. It's not impossible. If we've got good engineers that know what they're doing, they can do it. Yes, it will probably cost a little bit more, but how much is it going to cost to kill all these people that have worked so hard to bring this area back? And that's my statement, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. You should. I agree. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Whoever's next, and if you're welcome, if you want to stand, you're welcome. You're welcome to form a line too, if you'd like.
Well, I'm here basically to speak on the behalf of the public safety, and I agree with what she said about the businesses. But on public safety side, I'm a retired fireman, spent several years with the city. And I know that Fire Station 7 is going to be greatly hampered. You can talk about Fire Station 8 down at Central and Elder. You can talk about Station 1 at Main and Murdoch. But they're not necessarily there all the time. Plus, the response times is going to be increased dramatically to get from Central and Elder, which is Central and 235 basically, up to say 1600 block on Clarence, which is at 15th and McLean Boulevard. And when somebody is in cardiac arrest or their home is on fire, time matters a lot. And so I'm in favor of option 3, or at the very least option 2, which is leave one lane of traffic open. But I agree with what she said. I think engineers can do it. And what price do you put on public safety? What price do you put on somebody's life that could possibly be saved because getting there on time? And I don't know how my one question I have is, how is this decision going to be made? I mean, if it's a city council, we have one council member that lives in the area. And the rest of them live elsewhere, and it may not matter to them. And for me, where I live, I'm in North Riverside, so they're just right down the street from me. They're not going to be blocked, but I care about those people that are on the other side of the river.
Yes.
In the Wilmer's Riverside edition. And I think that's highly important. So I would say that we need to try and keep it open at the very minimum. Back when they built Fire Station 17 out west, they used a home and they put a small truck in there, at least for a quick response vehicle for medical emergencies and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's any option of that, to put something on the other side of the river. And I would also entertain an idea of putting a bridge across Meridian to 21st Street. I know it kind of goes to nowhere, but we live in a city that has a river winding through it. And we need to have access to get through it. And I know it'd probably only be a 2-lane bridge maybe, and those people in the neighborhood may not like it, but so be it. So anyway, on public safety, it's paramount to keep that bridge open. And I just don't like the fact matter. I think that the District 6 Advisory Board should be the ones making that decision, and our District 6 people should be making the decision, at least the people in the area. So, thank you very much.
I appreciate that. And I might mention two things real quick. And thank you for that, because I agree with you. And that's why we talked about that we will go back to the District 6 Advisory Board. We're going to work closely with Councilmember Ballard. I can't speak for other council members, but the reason why we're here tonight is to take in all this information so that I can share that with Councilmember Ballard, and then we can both share that with other council members. I might mention just a couple of reminders. Because I really appreciate the comment on public safety. So if we looked at keeping this bridge open in the 1 lane southbound, effectively you haven't hampered the response to public safety because you can still utilize the fire station at 21st and Coolidge. So theoretically, nothing's changed. So that's a good thing. I'm offering that up as right. So that'll take care of the public safety part. I want to show you something again real quick on the 2 lane. And we do have some tremendously smart engineers. I'm not the one to say, I made the comment that you can build anything you want with enough money. There does come a time when we have to balance whether we're going to look at trying to build a 2 lane, keeping 2 lanes and doubling or tripling the cost of this bridge. That's going to be a challenge, I think, for all of us and probably for the rest of the city council. And I'm just offering some, but let me mention one more thing that I didn't talk about good enough. You look at that north side of that bridge and where that commercial complex is, and there's a doctor's office and other things in there. What you can't see quite is the apartment complex. To build this the right way, regardless of what it costs, to be able to keep 2 lanes of traffic, safely 2 lanes of traffic, I'm confident we would have to acquire property north of that bridge. That becomes a lot more challenging in my mind, and you just have to start weighing the impact of displacing businesses. This isn't a matter, I can tell you, I've been doing this for 27 years. We've got a tremendous amount of experience in this room. When you start impacting right-of-way, there's only so many things you can do. You have to be able to offset a bridge. This is simple facts of engineering. We're not going to debate this part at all. I can promise you that. That we can't move this. If the only way we can do this safely is we basically got to move the bridge over. To move the bridge over, something has to change north of this bridge. Somebody is no longer going to be in a business that they're in. I just wanted to make sure everybody kept that in mind.
My name's Lee McLeod, and I'm the president of the Benjamin Hills Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Association, which only covers a very small part in District 6. And I would like to say that having Maggie being very proactive on this is great, except that her district is one of the largest in the city. And the people that live down there at close to the city center that are still in District 6 probably don't care much about this bridge because they're not shopping at 21st and Amidon. That being beside the point, I'd like to see on the picture of the public safety, can you bring that back up?
Yes.
How far south does our fire station up here actually is their normal coverage area? Because you're saying down there from Central and from the city, how far do they normally go? Do they go to 13th? Do they go south of 13th? That's a question I have, because that's a lot of area for them to be having to make up for us. I also had a comment at another meeting from another person that said people that live up here on 21st and want to go downtown to work are probably not going to go all the way around the West Street detour to get to work. And they may not even want to have to go to Broadway. So of course I said Waco is another option. But a gentleman that lives just east of the river said, well, I know what's going to happen. People are going to take a shortcut down around Perry, and they'll be coming through our neighborhood, our residential neighborhoods, and that puts our children and everybody else at risk. Extra traffic, maybe even some truck traffic that thinks they can get by with it. So whether or not you post policemen there to discourage the illegal detours, if you want to call it that, or what. But I think those people need to be kept in mind also. My last comment is I'm going to let them answer it when I'm done. My last comment is, when I looked at your map that it said pedestrian traffic
Right.
reroute. That pedestrian traffic is only from the walkway along the rivers, right?
Correct.
Bicycle and people that run along the river. It does not accommodate those who use the bridge to go back and forth shopping at the Amidon and 21st Street quarter. And I see a lot of them bringing their little grocery carts up there and bicyclists going up and down the bridge there. If you close the bridge or the walkway, they're probably not all going to go to a bus stop to get on the bus, even if it's free. So, you know, that was just a comment I had, that pedestrian traffic is not just bicyclists and runners along the river. Thank you.
Thank you. And I might address, and I'll have Chief O'Kady's come on up here. I might address the last part that was said. One thing I should have been clear about, and this is absolutely from a public safety standpoint, we will not allow pedestrian traffic on the bridge no matter what we do. There's no chance that we're going to do that. Just because the inherent safety issues of working around construction equipment, we will not allow pedestrian. It doesn't matter if we keep this open as a 2-lane bridge, we're not going to allow people to walk across the bridge. And I appreciate your comment. Don't get me wrong, I get it. That's why we're trying to do the best we can here to try to find a balance. And I think we've done that with the transit. I've only ridden a Wichita bus a couple of times, but it's easy for me to say if I lived in this area and it was free, I think I'd try to take advantage of it. So I'll let Chief O'Kady's talk about kind of the extent of coverage.
Good evening, everyone. Jose O'Kady's Battalion Chief with the Wichita Fire Department. So your question on the response areas, how far from Station 7 itself. So all fire stations have what we call a PRA, and that is a primary response area. It's not a perfect square shape around the center of the fire station 7, and then you just put 4 corners and being able to respond. So all the things, there's factors that take into consideration on the different types of primary response areas for each station. Just from that specific area, and I wish I would have had that and been able to share with Mr. Jansen, but for primary response area for Station 7, that goes down to 13th Street in that area. But at the same time, there's still some open areas that aren't even covered from Station 7 and Station 8 that meet up together. All fire stations really try to come up and be able to cover those response times, frames, and travel times in a specific time area. And there are some areas within that southwest portion that we're discussing of that neighborhood that is not being covered, not even with Station 7, with the bridge right now, and even Station 8 to be able to cover that.
Do you look at the density of, like on 13th, West 13th?
No, there's so many factors into how fire stations are built and on the way the thoroughfares and traffic of the streets are developed and how we able to communicate and be able to respond. So, excuse me?
You do normally go down
Yes.
and on both sides of the.
Yes, we do. Station 7 is responsible for that. But other factors that we take in consideration is that from when 911 dispatches, 911 uses a computer-aided dispatch, which we reference as CAD, and they will be able to communicate and dispatch the closest fire station that will be able to mitigate that situation in the fastest time from wherever they're located at, from Station 7, Station 8, or Station 1.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Jim. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 40 years. And first of all, I'd just like to say thank you to the city of Wichita for having the vision of putting some artistic elements into our bridges in Wichita. When I've had visitors come from out of state, they've all said how attractive our bridges are. So kudos for that. There's a positive on that. Second, I'd like to thank the commissioners for their input on the pedestrian traffic. That's going to be very important because there is a lot of it that crosses that bridge on a daily basis. And I understand construction zones can be extremely hazardous, but if there is a way to continue to have pedestrian access across that bridge when feasible, I think the neighborhood would greatly be able to utilize that. And then if you know, I was curious what the specific reason is for wildlife shutting down construction from basically March through August that you indicated. And then just lastly, even though I've lived here as long as I have, can somebody tell me where McLean ends and Amidon begins? Because I've always been curious about that. Thank you.
So on the environmental permitting question, so from April to August is spawning season for certain aquatic species in the river. That's when we've got to stay out of the river. It's for that very specific reason. So I'll just tell you real quick. This isn't, I'm not providing any political commentary, just so you know. But it's a frustration for engineers. It's a challenge we've dealt with for years, but it's a fact of life and what we do, because again, it comes from the federal level. It's for protection of the speckled chub, the Arkansas river shiner. These are species of fish that when we talk to environmental permitting people, they've never even seen, but they know there's a habitat. I'm not trying to make light of it, but there's a potential habitat for it. We deal with the same thing with the spotted skunk. I don't know if anybody has ever seen a spotted skunk. I haven't. We have to do the same thing with those. So it is a federal requirement, and we have to follow those very closely. So I appreciate that. I would tell you again, it's going to be a tremendous challenge to try to keep pedestrian traffic across this bridge, no matter what we do. I don't mind if the decision is made to keep this bridge open to some level of traffic. I don't mind taking a look again, but I'm just going to tell you it's going to be really, really hard to do. Well, we could, if Clayton, do you mind? I just talked to her about it, but maybe we'll go back and forth. Does that sound all right?
Right now on Zoom from some of our residents who are attending, there's just a few comments on here. One of them is, we are in favor of closing down the bridge completely. Okay, sure. Yes, it will be a pain in the neck, but we can deal with it for a few months. There are other ways to get to 21st and Amidon. That is one of the comments.
So this comment that they were in favor of closing the bridge down.
We have names.
Yeah.
We're all identifying ourselves.
Yes, I will. They have a different username. I will ask for their first and last name.
Or where they live.
Yeah. The second one is just from Susie Cunningham. She says, "Thank you, Maggie." Lusk is saying she's leaning toward option one. However, I'm one of the bicyclists who would like to commute to work, and I'm hesitant about how well the alternate bus route would work for this. So she's leaning for option one. She likes the idea of an additional pedestrian-only bridge. She works near City Center and lives in Benjamin Hills. That's all we have from our virtual attendees right now.
Thank you. Clayton?
Clayton Pearson from North Riverside. First one is a clarification question. I believe that was option 3, where from an engineering perspective, there was a concern if transit could really operate during that bridge, running as a one lane in each direction. If that is a concern for transit, would that also be a concern for putting fire trucks on that same kind of lane?
I might address that real quick, and I probably didn't say that really well. I should qualify that a different way. I wasn't concerned about the size of the buses,
Okay,
more on the weight so much as some lane width restrictions.
sure.
But what I should say is what we showed for the new transit routing and the stops, we would do that regardless. If they're able to route back across the bridge, it's even better because it's quicker, especially if it happens to be one way. But I thank you, because after I said that, I realized that wasn't quite right. I don't think that's really an issue.
Okay, fair enough. The second one is a technical observation or question about 6 feet for pedestrian sidewalk on one side, 10 feet on the other. I noticed the 10 feet is on the west side, but if we look at the population density map, the population density is on the east side. And I'm wondering how that factored in, or if there's other considerations that put the 10-foot on the west side. And then the third one would be, my opinion is all of these options, you're placing priorities. What's your best use of money? And part of that best use of money and time is what's your opportunity cost? So with these options 2 through 4, with the businesses, we're basically prioritizing which is worse, shutting down a bridge for 1 year and having that profit cost, or do you want to spread that profit cost over 2 years? That is also going to be a substantial loss. Also, based off of what I understand here, you're looking from the public funds of losing 2.7 to 8.5 million, which if you can generate the money, that's fine. But what could you have done with that money instead? And there are other needs and other wants in the area that has to be weighted for that. Small projects, you could do a lot with 2.5 million. Plant a lot of trees. You know, we've had issues with 11th Street and Bidding with businesses there and the traffic there. You could do a lot with 2.5 million in one intersection. Even on big projects, there's discussions now on what is Evergy's power line is going to be. If you want to bury it and you're looking for money, that is one way to come up with that money, is instead of spreading the project out for 2 years, use that money for that. You could probably put a good down payment on a new fire station too, for that same kind of money. So wanted to get that.
We don't have.
Thank you. Ed? And then maybe we can catch a few more comments.
My name's Ed Martin. I live at 1515 North Hood Street. We've been there for 50 years. So I think we'll probably stay. And I think everybody in this room, from a personal standpoint, we would like to keep the bridge open because it's an inconvenience for us. And I think we all have that. But I'm thinking about the businesses. And we're all talking about the businesses. And I'm wondering what the businesses would say if they would rather have restricted traffic for 1 year or for 2 years. You know, what's the burden on the businesses that we say we're trying to protect? I think we need that feedback. The other thing is that where I live on Hood Street, we've got a shortcut to get up to 21st. We can go up and come out by the bank over there. And somebody expressed this concern. The longer we're closed, the more traffic we're going to have coming through our neighborhood taking shortcuts. And those streets are not made for that. They're narrow. There's cars parked all over on them. There's kids. From a safety standpoint in our neighborhood, the shorter the time period, the better. Now, I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other here, but we need to look at both sides of this thing. And I want to compliment Gary on, I think, a very good presentation of facts. There's a lot of information there. And I think he did a good job. One of the things that I'm wondering about, and Gary, maybe you can address this. You talked about the continual deterioration of the bridge and how much can happen over 2 years. If we start the project in the fall and get it done in 14 months, deterioration is not a problem. I'm wondering what happens if we delay the project for a year and then we have to build it in 2 parts, so half the bridge is 2 years out. Are we in danger of having deterioration where we're going to have to go back in and do some modification of the bridge to take the heavy traffic during that time frame? Is that a possible factor?
It is, and I hadn't gotten that deep into the conversation, but you're right. That's a definite possibility. It's kind of hard to know. I mentioned that South Broadway bridge that got away from us unexpectedly, and that's an extreme. I'm not trying to hold that up. We don't try to do things by exception, but sure. In 2 years from now, if half the bridge is still there, I would mention another fact. Half bridges don't work real well all the time on their own, and there's some things that can happen if we're not really careful. I know our designers would deal with it, our designers would take care of it, But there's a chance that we would have to go in and do some fairly significant maintenance on the part of the bridge that's left over until the point in time that we can get it replaced. So I might mention one more quick comment too, that I can tell you that we've seen over time. And I'm just offering this information up on a lot of experience and having built a lot of projects. I mentioned that we typically see a reduction in traffic of up to 40% during construction, and that's when the road's left open. The concern about people going through neighborhoods is real. I get it. We hear it all the time. People are going to do that even if this bridge is left open because they don't want to drive through construction. I'm not trying to talk you into anything. I just want to make sure all these items are out there, because you could potentially have that traffic going through a neighborhood for 2 or 3 years compared to a shorter period of time.
Yeah, so my whole point is we all have an emotional stake in this. We all want to be able to get back and forth. I think these other things really need to be given fair consideration before a final decision is made.
Are there any, do you mind if I, and you don't have to talk, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Are there any business representatives here tonight? And you do whatever you want. Yeah, I just wanted to get a feel of how many businesses were here. If you feel like talking, please do. If you don't worry about it. I just want to see how many businesses were here. Well, not at 7 o'clock at night. Not all of them are, but.
My name's Bonnie Patrick, and I mostly have questions. My first question is, when was the traffic study done? Because it seems a little bit low. And my concern is if that was done during COVID, that would be a lot less traffic than what has increased now. And that traffic's going to even increase more with the new Freddy's or whatever's going in there at the corner, and some of the new businesses, the club car wash that we got. So I'm just concerned that that traffic study number is low and doesn't really indicate the true level of traffic that goes
Well,
through.
I might, so I would tell you it was not done during COVID, but I guess I'm curious of what your basis is that it's low.
Just because we've got, well, just looking at those numbers, I live in this area and I see the traffic. I mean, just coming here tonight. And like I said, with the club car wash that just went in and Freddie's coming in and.
But I gotta ask, and I mean, with all due respect, do you have a feel of what 16,000 vehicles a day is?
No, but I've seen other traffic studies and the numbers on those traffic studies and looking at that area and thinking, kind of comparing it to that area.
Here's what I would tell you. I think they're good numbers.
Mhm.
If it was 20,000 vehicles a day, our discussion wouldn't be any different.
I was just curious when
Yeah,
it was done.
yeah.
Okay,
But
no
I
worries.
just, that's all. I just want, and I
I was just
appreciate
curious
you
when it was
asking.
done.
I don't think our discussion would be any different.
Okay, will you still have to go back to the city council for more money since you said you only have
We're gonna have to go
5.5?
back to the city council for more money regardless.
Okay, so that's a mute issue. When we were talking about having to go back to the city council for any of these other plan changes, you've got to go back regardless.
We have to go back
Okay.
regardless, but there's a difference in going back for 2.7 million and 8 million.
I
Just so you
totally
know,
got that.
it's just harder for anybody to find that much money. That's,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood the process. And then lastly, the pedestrian traffic on the bridge, but what about under the bridge?
So if the bridge is closed, and I didn't do a good job of showing this, that map was kind of hard to see. We will take that path and take it up above top, because we could cross Amidon, and we'll provide a connection to that path up top. So that would still be used if the bridge is closed. If it's left open, and again, I know that's kind of hard to see, what we would do is take that traffic probably down to 13th and back and around. And I know that's a circuitous route. From a safety standpoint, we're going to tell people that's where you need to go. That doesn't mean that's what people will do. A lot of people walking on bikes are probably going to walk up the bank and cross right there. We just want to promote that. So we would take them down to 13th Street where you can actually safely cross and then come back up to the river.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie Hicks, and different people, I think, may have made most of these points, but I'm going to try and make them all in one fell swoop. I will give full disclosure first. I have been in private business. I have been a woman owner of a small business, and I have worked for the Public Works Department. So just so you know, I've kind of run the gamut there. So here's my thought on this. I do have a preference as to what I think is best, but that's my opinion. I'm not actually here to promote that. What I did notice in listening to the conversation tonight is that as with all projects, this project has been through multiple of design, conversation, community engagement, citizen boards, DAB. It's been presented to council members. So there's been a lot of thought that goes into it. I certainly understand and agree on many levels that it's a difficult decision. And it's not a decision that everybody is in agreement with. However, I want to thank Public Works for giving all the options that they have pursued, because they've pursued. I want to thank Councilmember Ballard for making sure that this opportunity has come up, because the ship sailed partly. She was on board. So I think it's a testament to her leadership and to Public Works for getting involved and starting to present these different options. There's always other options. Money's the only requirement. No matter what we do, unfortunately, businesses are going to be impacted. So it's a matter of trying to decide the best way to impact those businesses, the best way to impact residents, with the understanding that the key concern here always is safety. Ours, safety of the pedestrians, safety of the emergency response people. There are not perfect answers. There's only the best answers. So with the idea that everybody's going to have what's best and why it's best, and the real deciding factors here is going to be money and how long we stretch that money out, I would just encourage everybody to really think about something that a previous person said. All about money in the end, because almost anything can be engineered with enough money. Think about where the money's going to, from where we're going to find the money, what other things could be done with that money, and how you want that money prioritized. And then take that information, speak with Councilmember Ballard, speak with the mayor, reach out to other council members. Just decide what you think the priority of that money should be. And we're all going to have a different concept because we all have different concerns, especially business owners and especially people that live in those neighborhoods. I do think, though, from past experience, it is important to remember is that people are going to cut through the neighborhood no matter what. So you make the decision, is it safer just to do it for 1 year? Or is it safer to have them cutting through the neighborhoods for several? Balance there. I don't know where that balance is. But I think what I really take away from all of this tonight most is that it's a matter of money, impact, balancing it, make the priority based on multiple factors, talk with Councilmember Ballard. And for people that have felt that they have not had enough communication or felt that they haven't had enough communication, it's a tough road to hoe to communicate with people in the ways that which they would like to be communicated. So if you have any ideas on how Gary can do that best, I'm sure he would love to hear what venues and what avenues would keep that communication going. And because there's one thing I have heard that I have to ask, somebody else is going to ask it eventually. At one point when the municipal bridge was done, right there next to the school, a lot of people crossed that bridge. There was definitely concern that people would try to go across the river, low water crossing. You know, they all played in the river and they were young, kind of a thing. And the decision was made to put in a pedestrian bridge at a significant cost because we the city cared about health and safety. That was a much shorter span than this would be, right? You might just want to
Thank you.
put that together. Because it's being
I
asked.
appreciate that reminder. It's a lot shorter span. Sorry, Les, I didn't mean to
No,
cut you
I'm
off.
gonna say that I'm all done. That was my last.
It's a
thing.
lot shorter span and there's school right there. I mean, that.
What was it that she said?
She said, so when we rebuilt the municipal bridge at North High School, the historic bridge there, we actually put in a pedestrian bridge. And the main purpose was because it's a big high school and there's a lot of parking on the other side of the river. And they couldn't park there anymore. So that's what really drove that. I think that's a little bit different probably than trying to get pedestrians across the river here. And it's a lot longer span to get across this river. So thank you. I hate to keep you standing too long. Do you mind if we do a couple of comments real quick? Sorry, if you don't mind.
Okay, so we do have a few comments and questions. This is, hi, this is Karen Long. I live in Marina Point Apartments, just north of the bridge. Please elaborate on the disruption to businesses north to the bridge with option 3. How much land would the city need to acquire? Would there be similar disruption with option 2? Thank you.
So I don't know the answer. Until we could start digging in deeper, we didn't feel like it was worth trying to go to that limit just yet, because we'd have a lot of sunk costs if we decided not to go with that option. However, if that's what's determined to be the best decision here and the city council decides to do that, we will start digging in. This is based on our best knowledge, our experience, talking to Sean about this a lot, and Brad. We've seen these situations. We can tell by what would have to happen with enough offset of that bridge. Draw lines on paper enough, some concept drawings that you can see there'd be impact. I don't know the answer. Probably, I'm kind of spitballing here a little bit. It probably would be easier to try to impact. I want to be careful when I say that. We probably would try to impact the development on the northeast corner before we would get into that entire apartment complex, if that makes sense. Because once you started to get some portion of it, but I can't, unfortunately, I don't have the answer right now to know. We have seen over the years, even with street widening projects, if you start impacting the parking alone enough for a business, you can end up wiping out the entire business. And so that would be my concern, even if we didn't get into that building, that we could have enough issues with parking. We just don't know that yet. If that's something that we decide is worth pursuing and need to look at more, we will do that, and we can have a better answer, but I don't have it right now.
So another question is from Susie Cunningham. Her question is, what can be done to support small businesses if option 1 is chosen?
So what I would say is to go back on what we talked about with that communication plan and what we allow to be done with signage. Again, this takes some effort from the businesses, and we recognize that that's asking a lot of them. However, I don't want to speak for the businesses. I'm not one of the business owners, but what we've worked with other businesses in situations like this, I think it's relatively low cost and relatively low effort to start getting messaging out there. Before social media and everything else, people used to put signs up on their door. They had flyers that they would hand out saying, here's what's going to be happening and when, please come back and see us. Here's how you get to us. We have gone back to those businesses and they have told us it worked pretty well. So that communication plan, as part of what we do, we talked about Channel 7. I don't know how many people watch City Channel 7, but I think it gets quite a bit of viewership. Even if you're not a Facebook person, a website person, what we've done before is shown graphics of the project. Here's where the bridge is closed. Here's where the bridge is restricted. These businesses are still open. Please make sure you still go see these businesses. And we've seen it work. It's never going to be ideal. There's going to be impact no matter how you look at it. But those are the types of things we've done to try to help.
And then we have a comment from Sue. She says, I'm in favor of closing the bridge. West Street does merge into 21st northbound, bringing traffic eastbound to 21st and Amidon. It will be an adjustment. As a commuter, we'll have to make allowances for other projects as well. And then one last question from Esther. Her question is, how will this affect the people who work at these businesses commuting from other areas of town?
That's the hardest part when you close down a road or you close down one direction is people got to leave earlier in the morning. Nobody wants to do that. We don't like it. I live north of here. I drive across this bridge 3 or 4 times a week at least. I have other ways to go. So it doesn't mean I have to, but I go across this bridge. So I get it. And especially people who work in this area, what we have found in talking to a lot of people over the years and a lot of public engagement is it generally, it's not going to take you that much longer. The Eagle, when they had a front page story about this project, they drove the routes. I'm not offering judgment here, just offering some facts. And I think that they showed either way was 4 to 5 minutes. We hope the people that have to do the 4 to 5 minutes, that's something they can adjust to, over time. I would just tell you again, if they are coming from the south and we're not able to keep northbound traffic open, they potentially would have to do that for several years compared to 14 months if it's closed. So it's just those types of things to still keep in mind, how long people want to endure the kind of some of the same inconveniences.
Good for over 20 years. First question to you is, where are we going to close off Amidon? 13th or at 15th?
So we would have signage at 13th Street that says no through traffic.
So they would still travel up to
Local
15th.
traffic could still come through because we still want people to get up to 15th Street, but it would be barricades that says no through traffic, bridge out, bridge closed, big signage, but people could still get through to 15th.
Okay, so all the traffic that you think would be diverted to 13th would more than likely go through 15th and 7th. And other people have addressed that issue also, but are there any thoughts of putting in more stop signs, say on 17th Street and 15th Street, so maybe people would be deterred from taking those two routes? Because 13th Street is a mess with the stoplights. You can't get from one area to the other without stopping almost every stoplight, and more traffic on that. So is there any considerations given to 15th and 17th Street traffic abatement?
So a couple things, and I'm glad you mentioned the stoplights because I happen to know the people who can work on those stoplights. One of the things that we do in a situation like this, if we were to close northbound traffic, we will change the timing on those stoplights to accommodate this. Give you an example, and this isn't the final answer. But if so, during the morning peak hour, if we assume that there'll be more people going west on 13th Street, we will allow more green time during that time for people going to work. So we would look at making adjustments. It's not that we don't want those lights to work now. Those are some older signals. There's older technology. We haven't caught up to it yet, but we can do some things artificially, if you will, during these times to try to make the signals work a little bit better. Stop signs in neighborhoods is a really challenging proposition. We've heard that a lot. What'll happen is our best bet is to keep a really close eye on it to start. We'll watch traffic. We've got video, we got cameras we can put up that will watch traffic and see what traffic patterns are doing. We can put traffic counters down and we can see immediately what type of impact it's having. Unwarranted stop signs, number one, should not be used for speed control or deterrent of people coming through a neighborhood. Unwarranted stop signs can actually create a lot more problems than not, because what will happen is during the off-peak times, and if there's not much traffic there, people will start ignoring those stop signs, and you can see an uptick in collisions and safety issues. That doesn't mean that's not a good question and a good point. We've had the most luck of very closely monitoring what happens in these neighborhoods right after we start closing things, limiting things. Again, I'll tell you, if we can find a way to keep 2 lanes open, there is still going to be cut through traffic. There's zero doubt in my mind.
That's a given.
And so we'll want to watch it really close. If we can start seeing patterns, it gives us a lot better idea of places that we can do things with traffic calming and things like that. So my answer is we wouldn't necessarily go in right away and put in stop signs, but we would keep a close eye on it.
The other thing is, for those people who, there's 4 different species of aquatic life, and one, like you said, the spotted skunk, who are, is the worst times for the river because of overflow and inflow. They all need clear water to spawn, and those river is not clear. So there is a problem there, but you know, when you get the aquatic stuff, you're not gonna deal with it. Thank you.
I saw you raise your hand. I appreciate you adding that. That's good.
I was going to say about the traffic on 17th Street, because I live on the corner of 17th. Cannot tell you, there have been a lot of accidents, a lot of close calls. People that are traveling east on 17th Street act like there's no side streets whatsoever. And it looked like from your map that the bus stop would be right on our corner. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but with as much bicycle traffic and walking traffic that we have right now, if there's even more added to that with buses, I'm a little worried about the people biking and walking.
So I'll tell you, thank you. Here's what we've actually seen in areas like this. These big buses will actually create some artificial traffic calming. It's just like when you have on-street parking, one of the best things you can do actually to calm traffic is to have on-street parking. Because when you narrow things up, people will tend to drive slower. We have seen over time, any of our streets that have buses on them, that it actually provides a calming effect. I get your point that buses and people walking is not necessarily a good combination. I would hope, I don't know if there's sidewalks in
No,
that area,
there
so
are
people
not.
have to walk in the street.
Mhm.
I think our bus drivers do a really good job of being cognizant of that and are driving at speeds that we would hope there wouldn't be any issues. But I made a note of 17th and Bella Vista because I appreciate hearing that. If there's already potential issues, I want to look at that now and see if there's something that needs to be done in advance, no matter what we do here. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Can I add something just real quick to that, if I may, please? Most intersections are unmarked. At least bad things happen.
And that's what we'll keep a close eye on, and I appreciate that.
So Scott Lucas, I live at 2325 North Dogwood, lived there for 4 years. And I am on the district advisory board, so I voted in November for what you have seen so far. Just a couple clarifying questions from what we saw. One being, when you presented before, the detour was on Broadway, and now it's Waco. So just, you might speak to that a little bit.
Thank you for that. So, yeah, because I know we had created some confusion and Sean was right. And so I told him, just bear with me, Sean, I'm going to show something different tonight. And I think, so thank you for it. Here's what the challenge is with Waco. As a formal signed detour, trucks can't make the turns very well. That's the only reason. People can absolutely use Waco. What we're looking at with a formal signed detour, we have to make the assumption that someone doesn't know how to get back around. And if they're driving a truck, that Waco is almost impossible to make turns there. That's the reason why we changed that. I think most people plug into their phone now where they're going and they don't care about detour signs probably, but we still think it's a responsible thing to do to say, here's where you got to go.
The other thing, when you presented to us, you provided ranges for estimated construction instead of single months. And you might just kind of share with, obviously with weather and different issues that are we
As far as
presenting.
the time.
Yeah, so it was, I believe it was 10 to 14 months is what you presented.
Yeah, and
before,
so what we tried to do here was to provide the top end. There's so many factors. I say this jokingly, so bear with me just a minute, because I've done this for 27 years, depending on what year it is. Closing that bridge down could be 9 months to 3 years, you know, I mean, and it won't be, but it's construction is a challenge. I was telling Councilmember Ballard the other day, it's one of the hardest things that we do. I've had council members over the years get really, really frustrated when we said something was going to take 8 months and it took 12. And then at the same time, if we said it was going to take 15 months and it took 12, they accused me of padding it so we would look good. So it's hard. It's so hard. It seems like it's a no-win situation. What we showed here is we think the top end of that range.
And the other thing, Chief, and I may have misheard you, but you said there was a gap currently in coverage between the two firehouses. The way it sits right now, to me, that's sort of a concern if we do shut it down, that you already have identified a gap as is, we shut it down and there already is a gap. So, I mean, if we have additional resources that we can provide, if whatever the decision is made, uses might.
Yes, sir. So that gap is, it is going to be increase our travel time to that specific area in that southwest portion of that. And years ago, I have 24 years on the department. There used to be a fire station at 13th and St. Paul Gal area. And then the fire station got relocated to up north. So even when that got removed or relocated, that created that gap at that time. And that gap is going to increase our travel time to that specific couple areas in that neighborhood right there. So right now with the increase or with the closure of Amidon, it will increase our travel time from Station 8, Station 1, and even Station 7 if they do have to go around to West Street. So again, it just depends on the specifics on who's in the firehouse at that time and the type of emergency and the number of units that will respond.
No, I think we're good online right now. Thank you.
Asbury Church on Julianne. I grew up in North Riverside though, so I've been up in this area my entire life. I have a few clarifying questions, just because I don't know the answers to these. So you mentioned this does not qualify for federal funding, and I was under the impression ARPA funding, which I think Wichita got, I don't know, north of a lot of money, and I was under the impression that was for infrastructure. So is that not tagged for any of this, or is that what it didn't qualify for, or how did it not qualify?
I can't speak to ARPA funding. I've been involved some, and I've heard Councilmember Ballard and others talk about it. And the council, so far, city council is I think obligated most of the city's ARPA funds elsewhere. I was not aware that could be used for infrastructure. My reference was not ARPA. But there's multiple ways we receive federal funding. Some is formula funds distribution to the state of Kansas. There's about $11 million a year for the region. But the large federal infrastructure bill that was just passed, the $1 trillion bill, there's a lot of grant opportunities in there. That's the federal funding for infrastructure that I know we don't qualify for. I can't speak to ARPA, and I apologize, but we can probably get you some more information on that.
Okay, because I'd just be curious how that's all being allocated.
Sure.
So, and this perception skills were pretty tied to option one. A lot of investment into it. I'm curious because and correct me if I'm wrong, are 2 and 3 more afterthoughts after there's been concerns raised? I'm just curious, how much has already been spent on design for number 1? If it's ready to go, it's pretty much through to the design phase.
It's not. We're still in the conceptual design phase, but kind of moving forward. And I don't know what the number is. I could get you that information too, but no, I don't think this is a foregone conclusion at all. I would mention again that we fully expected to have this type of public engagement. I know it feels a little bit backwards, and that's okay. I'm not here to defend that. Maybe there was a better way to do this, but when we did our original analysis and looked at the cost versus the benefit, the time that it would take, our recommendation, my recommendation to the district advisory board and the city council was this first part of this. But we knew that was started at that point in time to try to have a chance, if that's what we did, to get started this fall. We knew we would come to this point of public engagement. We started hearing from people right away. We had one person in the audience at the district advisory board meeting who was very vocal about it. Happened to be the council member Ballard, who was elected the very next night. And so I was glad she was there because she asked some really good questions at that district advisory board meeting. And I know that feels, I'm not trying to talk anybody anything here or make you think that we were trying to do something a different way. We decided it was a good thing to start that direction because it's fairly minimal cost to be working on the design to this point. We knew we would get to this point. I knew we would hear this feedback. The reason why we took this time to look at things like the transit routing, the communication plan, working with Wichita Fire Department to be able to bring it to this point. I'm grateful to see so many people here and have really appreciated this feedback. I don't know what happens next, but we certainly got a lot to talk about. So,
Thank you. Last question. This totally misunderstood what you said. 2% for art. The artist is already on board. How has there already been an artist chosen?
well, through our process, when we hired a design consultant back in July, no matter what we were going to do, even if we chose option 4 to rehabilitate the bridge, the design council made the decision to add art to the bridge. That's why when we chose the design team that we did, we told them you need to include an artist on your team. So it works better for the artists to work with the civil engineering design consultant throughout design so everything can incorporate together.
I only bring that one up just because I know the Northwest Water Treatment Facility. He had went out and then it came back. That's a whole other topic. So that's why it piqued my interest.
No, and
That it was like how-
thank you. It's good that you recognize that. That's a $500 million project and it's got kind of a life of its own.
Mhm.
I would not necessarily use that as the example of how most projects work in regards to art. So
Very good.
thank you.
Tisha Canizzo, and I'm with the Workforce Center, so welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for hosting us.
I have a question about public transportation between 21st and 13th up to the bridge. So we have a bus stop right out front here on Amidon, which is really important to a lot of the customers. Down to the bridge, being able to turn around. and
I
get
think the
back out
existing
again.
stops, Sean, do you happen to know? Did we get that far?
We
with? I
did
think
not
we-
get that much detail, my assessment.
But we can follow up on that. I don't
Yeah,
think there was
usually
any.
then they turn around and-
Yeah, I think they would. Well, I appreciate you asking that question. I don't think that they would just follow this purple route. I would expect that they would still honor those existing stops. We would want them to.
Allow bus access through the parking lot to get to.
Thank you, and we really appreciate that. Those are the types of things that really help with projects like this. So I appreciate hearing that.
Concern is Perry is going to be a real. Once they understand what's going on with the bridge, Perry is the quickest shot for someone, especially someone that's westbound on 13th Street. I mean, we already have flying down Perry Street. We've had traffic incidents. Low chart for that.
So we're never going to be able to stop people from using the public street under any circumstance. The time when we would want to try to get police department involved if there's excess speed, which I just heard you say, I would go back to what I talked about before. We'll try to establish, no matter what happens here, we know that traffic's going to go through these neighborhoods. We will watch traffic. We'll keep an eye on it. We can put traffic counters down that both count traffic and measure speed. And we can see what we can do things for artificial slowing down of traffic calming within these neighborhoods. We've done some things that work pretty well. I talked before, if you got on-street parking, it kind of helps. But we can do some things to kind of narrow down some of these streets that I think that can help. We try to stay away from things like speed bumps. People like those, but those are a real challenge. But in certain situations, there might be things we have to do like this. If we see excess traffic, it's hard. Wichita Police Department's not here, but I can speak for them and tell you it becomes a resource issue, right? They would recognize, just like we would, that that's not good, especially if you live on Perry. That's going to be hard for the Wichita Police Department to prioritize that. So we need to do something else to try to help them out. So I just would tell you again, and that our commitment is, no matter what we do here, once we get to construction, we're going to keep a really close eye on these neighborhood streets. I'm sure we will hear from the people living in the neighborhoods immediately, and that's okay. That's what we're here for. And that's some of the best things that can help us, is for people to say, wow, we know where the traffic's going, because that helps us out too, and then we can try to address that.
All right, I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. We have one more speaker.
This was the busiest intersection in town, 21st Avenue. That's going on. This is where Wichita came to get something done. Since I got here, the things I've done in a new business unit. Very long if we all go home. We all lose everything we have and we're out. Done very quickly, as in the first option one would be good. Mine is probably very unfeasible. Didn't take out this one. This would be mine. Cost the most, but how much don't get from us in the shopping center and other places around here.
I appreciate that. I would offer one more time to that comment. I don't have the answer, but if we build a new bridge beside the old one, hey, we'd love to do that. You know, like I said, I mentioned, if you go in rural areas of Kansas, you do that. We're going to put someone out of business instantly by having to do that. If we build a new bridge beside the old bridge, either the northwest corner or the northeast corner is gone. It's whatever's there is wiped out because of the space that that'll take.
Northeast would be great.
Well, we appreciate hearing your preference. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Brian Johnson, and I practice at the Ascension Medical Group Family Medicine Clinic that's Mr. Harris is trying to take out. Well, I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised because I kind of came here tonight to argue for the two-way, you know, let's keep traffic going both ways. And the big reason for that was that unbeknownst to a lot of people, right on the north end of the bridge, there's a rather large medical presence. We have 6 very busy family medicine physicians in the office that I'm at. We have ComCare across the street, which services a large number of clients, and access for those patients is going to be severely hampered when the bridge closes. So my thought all along is we've got to find some way to maintain two-way traffic up and down McLean Boulevard, because a lot of the patients that we serve are really the north-south corridor of Wichita, not the east-west corridor. Having seen all of this and the fact that if we do that, I'm not going to exist, I think I'm going to change my mind.
I did not offer that up to try to change your mind, but I appreciate it.
So,
Is that a given?
I'm not sure I have a strong opinion as I came in with, but it seems like to me, we either close the bridge down, get it over with, and move on, or we find some other way to do the two-way thing. To me, the one-way traffic thing other than the fire issue, does not really make a lot of sense. Because it helps the fire get across to the south, but for the businesses, from a business standpoint at 21st and Amidon, that does not help those businesses at all.
You're correct. There's no gain on that.
There's no gain there. There's more cost and there's more time. So, I say either we try to figure out some feasible way to keep the thing open both ways, or we just shut it down, get it over with, and let's move on. We need a new bridge. That bridge is the same age as I am. I played under that bridge when I was 5. I rode my bike across that bridge to David's when I was 8. I know that bridge. I practiced here for 27 years. I know the neighborhood, and we just need to get the thing done. And if the best way to do it is to close it and figure out a way to get it built, then let's do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I might clarify something because I appreciate you asking what you did. That what I said there is not a given. I said, but I'm confident enough that what we've looked at to do it safely, something has to give on one of those corners. We've done this type of work long enough. We know that it doesn't take much impact to put people out of business. And I'd rather be on the side of caution right now and say it doesn't look real good. But you know what? I'll talk to Brad a little bit more and see, what it would take for us to take a farther look. I think we've done a deep enough dive already to know it's just not a very viable option. We still wanted to show it because I didn't want to, have anybody assume we didn't look at it. It just does not look good at all for making that work. It's kind of like these neighborhood streets. I don't know.
On your way home, drive down Waco and see the condition of it.
So just so you know, that 21st in Waco, that's really, really bad. That is on schedule to be fixed this year. And it'll be done before this bridge work starts. That mess there, it's bad. That part will be fixed. You bring up another good point that we want to make sure for pushing traffic elsewhere that it's decent roads, right? So we'll be taking a closer look at that too. And I appreciate you mentioning that. You add more traffic to a road, it'll start to take its impact on it too. And so we watch for that and keep an eye on that. So.
There's one last comment from our viewers on Zoom. It says, consider taking extra precautions to the do not enter area to the northeast side of 13-Amidon intersection. I'm sure that a lot of cars still ignore it, but that might become a worse problem after the detour starts, and the residents on that street would be affected. The do not enter sign is at the south end of Charles Avenue, but still allows traffic from Amidon to enter on the other side.
And I appreciate that. And I do know where that's at. And I know what you're talking about. So we'll definitely take a look at that.
Councilmember Ballard for District 6. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to come to this engagement. For the people that are participating online, this is exactly what I was looking for. I think the rest of the staff was looking for. I appreciate Fire being here and everybody else that has helped make this happen, and Anna. We really appreciate all of the feedback. This is really important to me. I've been a small business owner myself, and I know how difficult it is. When I had my bar, they rebuilt a Quick Trip right next door to me at 13th and West Street, and it made it very difficult. So I am super sensitive to the businesses. I think we would all agree that the bridge does need to be replaced. We just have to try to figure out the best way, and whether that's ripping off the Band-Aid and closing it and getting it done quickly, or trying to figure out, the finances to keep one or maybe two open. I think that's something that we'll take back and try to figure out. So I just appreciate it. Please reach out to me. We will be talking about this at the DAB in
May 2nd,
May
Monday,
2nd.
May 2nd.
Yes, so you guys are welcome to come there and speak again. And I just wanted to give Commissioner Cruz a chance if you wanted to say anything or if you have any anything to share?
No, I love seeing all this engagement.
So I would just thank you guys so much, and feel free to email me or come to the DAB, or I'm pretty easy to find, and let me know what other concerns you guys have. So thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Quick reminder that we'll be pushing out as much information as we can through all the different platforms. I would remind you about Forum on the city's website. It's going to be a really cool place to see everything you want to know about this project, and there'll be conversation there. You can ask questions anytime you want that will be responded to in short time by staff. So call Sean if you need some, email, let me know. We're here to answer any questions that you've got. If nothing else, if you want to be at the District Advisory Board meeting May 2nd, we will be talking about what our recommended plan is moving forward. So thank you for coming out.